Hey there, and welcome to Crazy Pepper, the channel where drama sizzles and revenge burns hotter than ever. If you love jaw dropping twists, bold characters, and stories that keep you guessing till the end, you're in the right place. Subscribe and dive into gripping tales of betrayal, karma, and ultimate payback. Get ready for unforgettable moments and satisfying endings, only on Crazy Pepper. Hit that bell and let the drama begin. My wife snapped, "You're cooking dinner every night from now on. I'm done lifting a finger." I said, "Understood." I called a realtor. 6 hours later, when she stumbled in after brunch and shopping, the kitchen was empty, and so was every closet she used. That's when Alicia realized the game had changed. My name's Greg Martinez, and I've been underestimated my whole life. 43 years old, managing a chain restaurant in Millfield, Ohio, one of those Rust Belt towns where everyone knows your business before you do. I used to box in college, back when my hands were quicker than my mouth. These days, I save the fighting for when it really matters. Alicia stood in our gutted kitchen, designer heels clicking on bare linoleum, her perfect blonde hair still salon fresh from her morning appointment. She was holding 3 shopping bags from stores we couldn't afford, her green eyes wide with what I can only describe as aristocratic shock. "Greg, what the hell is this?" I was sitting at the one remaining chair, mine, reading the newspaper like it was any other Tuesday evening. "You said you were done lifting a finger. I figured you meant it. Where's everything? Where are my clothes?" "Storage unit downtown. Here's the key." I slid it across the empty counter. "Rent's paid through next month. After that, you'll need to figure something out." She stared at the key like it was a live snake. "You can't be serious." "Dead serious. You want to act single? Be single. You want to be waited on hand and foot? Find someone else to do the waiting." The thing about Alicia is she's never been told no in her life. Daddy's little princess, law degree from Case Western, legs that could stop traffic, and a face that launched 1,000-second glances. She married me because I was stable and reliable, code words for safe backup plan. What she didn't count on was that even reliable guys have breaking points. "You're being ridiculous," and she said, but her voice had that tremor it gets when she's not in control. I had a long day. I was tired. People say things when they're tired. People also do things when they're tired of being treated like hired help. I folded the newspaper with deliberate precision. "Your boyfriend can cook for you now." The shopping bags hit the floor. "My what?" "Dominic Torino owns that new gym on 5th Street. Big guy, lots of muscles, drives that ridiculous red Camaro with the racing stripes." I stood up, all 6 feet of me unfolding like a carpenter's ruler. "You've been working late a lot lately. Funny thing is, I called your office last Thursday around 9 p.m. Nobody answered." Alicia's face went through several interesting color changes. "I don't know what you think you know. I know you've been screwing the meathead for 3 months. I know you think I'm too stupid to notice. And I know you're about to lie to my face again." She opened her mouth, closed it, then found her lawyer voice. "Even if that were true, which it's not, you can't just throw me out. I have rights. This is my house, too." "Actually, it's my house. Bought it 2 years before we met, remember? Your name's not on the deed." I picked up a manila folder from the counter. "Divorce papers, already filed. You've got 30 days to contest, but I wouldn't bother. Ohio's a no-fault state, and I've got pictures." That last part was a bluff, but Alicia didn't know that. "Pictures? You and Tarzan at the Moonlight Motel. Last Tuesday, room 237. Somebody should tell you that red Camaro is pretty hard to miss in a parking lot." The truth was simpler and more pathetic. I'd followed them once, parked across the street, and watched my wife of 7 years walk into a Fleabag motel with a guy who looked like he bench-pressed small cars for fun. I didn't take pictures. I didn't need to. Sometimes seeing something once is enough to burn it into your brain forever. Alicia sank into the remaining chair, her composure cracking like ice in spring. "Greg, please. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. I made a mistake." "You made a choice. Every time you lied about working late, every time you came home smelling like his cologne, every time you treated me like your personal servant, those were choices." I headed for the door, then stopped. "Oh, and Alicia? Your friend Susie knew. She's been covering for you, making excuses, even suggested I give you space. Thought you should know who your real friends are." I left her sitting in that empty kitchen, surrounded by shopping bags full of things she couldn't afford, in a house that was no longer hers. The October air bit at my face as I walked to my truck, but I was smiling for the first time in months. Phase 1 was complete, but I wasn't done. Not even close. The Black Cat Lounge sits on the corner of Main and Elm like a stubborn old drunk who refuses to go home. It's the kind of place where the beer's cold, the lights are dim, and everybody minds their own business until they don't. I'd been nursing a whiskey for 20 minutes when my phone started buzzing. First call, Alicia, declined. Second call, Susie Patterson, Alicia's best friend and chief enabler. Declined. Third call, Dominic Torino himself. That one I answered. You've got some balls calling me, Dom. We need to talk. His voice had that gym rat growl, all testosterone and protein powder. Man to man. I'm listening. Not over the phone. Meet me at my gym in an hour. I laughed. Your gym? Your turf? What's next? You want to arm wrestle for her? Just come alone, Martinez. We can settle this like adults. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, then at Karen behind the bar. She was 26, red hair, sharp tongue, and the kind of small-town wisdom that comes from listening to drunks confess their sins 6 nights a week. Bad news? She asked, refilling my glass without being asked. Depends on your perspective. Guy who's been sleeping with my wife wants to have a heart-to-heart. The musclehead from the gym? Karen knew everything that happened in Millfield. Came with the job. Heard you kicked her out today. Whole town's talking. News travels fast. Faster when it's interesting. So what are you going to do? I drained the whiskey and dropped a 20 on the bar. Going to have a conversation about boundaries. Want some advice? Shoot. Don't let him sucker you into anything stupid. Guys like that, they think everything's about who can lift more weight. But smart beats strong every time. I was halfway to the door when she called out again. Greg, give him hell. Torino's Fitness occupied a converted auto parts store on 5th Street. All chrome and mirrors and motivational posters featuring people who looked like they'd been carved from marble. The bass from the sound system hit you before you walked through the door. Some kind of electronic workout music designed to make you feel inadequate. Dominic was waiting by the free weights, arms crossed, wearing a tank top that showed off biceps the size of my thighs. He was handsome in that obvious way some women fall for. Square jaw, dark hair, the kind of tan that comes from a bottle. Everything about him screamed, "Look at me, Martinez." He nodded like we were old friends. Dom. I kept my distance, hands loose at my sides. Nice place, very shiny. Built it from nothing. Took me 3 years to save enough to buy this building. Congratulations. I'm sure your mother's proud. His face darkened. Let's cut the crap. You know why you're here. Actually, I don't. You called me, remember? Said we needed to talk man to man. I looked around the empty gym. Though I noticed you sent your customers home first, afraid they might see something embarrassing. I'm trying to be respectful here. Alicia and I, what we have is real. It's not some fling. Real. I tasted the word like bad wine. How long have you two been keeping it real? That's not important. It is to me. See, I'm trying to figure out the timeline. When did my wife decide she was done with our marriage? Was it before or after she started test driving your equipment? Dominic took a step forward, using his size to intimidate. Classic gym bro move. Watch your mouth. Or what? You'll bench press me to passing? I didn't back down. Here's the thing, Dom, I know exactly what you are. You're the guy who peaked in high school, spent 10 years working factory jobs, and now you think owning a gym makes you somebody special. You don't know anything about me. I know you drive a Camaro with racing stripes. I know you take selfies in the mirror. And I know you're the kind of guy who goes after married women because single ones see right through you. That hit home. His hands clenched into fists. Alicia came to me, he said. She was unhappy. You weren't giving her what she needed. What she needed? You mean besides a house, a car, health insurance, and 7 years of putting up with her princess act? She needed someone who appreciated her. Someone who made her feel alive. I started laughing. Couldn't help it. Alive? Jesus, Dom, did you get that line from a romance novel? What's next? You gonna tell me about your deep conversations? You think this is funny? I think it's hilarious. You actually believe you're the hero in this story, the knight in shining armor, rescuing the damsel in distress. I walked over to the bench press, looked at the weight he had loaded. 400 pounds. Impressive. Bet that really impresses the ladies. It impresses your wife. Ex-wife, as of today. I sat down on the bench, looked up at him. Want to know something funny? Alicia's broke, has been for months. Those shopping trips, credit cards, that fancy car. Leased. Her law firm's been cutting hours, and she's been living off my paycheck while pretending to be successful. I could see doubt creeping into his eyes. So congratulations, Dom. You won the lottery. A high-maintenance woman with expensive tastes and no money to pay for them. Hope you're ready to be her new ATM. You're lying. Am I? Check her credit report. Better yet, wait until she moves in with you and starts redecorating. See how long that gym membership money lasts when she's buying $1,000 handbags. I stood up, dusted off my hands. But hey, true love conquers all, right? That's when he swung at me. I saw it coming from a mile away. Dominic telegraphed punches like a semaphore operator, all wind up and no surprise. I ducked under his right cross, stepped inside his reach, and drove my elbow into his solar plexus. He folded like a lawn chair. Boxing, I said, standing over him while he gasped for air. Learned it in college. Funny thing about technique, it beats brute strength every time. I walked to the door, then turned back. Oh, and Dom, next time you want to have a man-to-man conversation, try using words instead of fists. Makes you look less like a caveman. I left him there on his knees, surrounded by all that chrome and mirrors, probably wondering how a restaurant manager had just schooled him in his own gym. Phase 2 was complete, but the night was still young. Susie Patterson lived in one of those suburban developments where all the houses look the same and all the lawns are exactly the same shade of green. Cookie-cutter dreams for cookie-cutter people. I parked across the street and watched her through the living room window, pacing back and forth with her phone pressed to her ear. Probably talking to Alicia. Probably planning damage control. Susie had been Alicia's best friend since law school, the kind of woman who smiled to your face while sharpening knives behind your back. She was attractive in a calculated way. Personal trainer 3 times a week, highlights every 6 weeks, wardrobe that cost more than most people's cars. Married to a dentist named Paul, who worked 60-hour weeks to pay for her lifestyle. I'd never liked her, but I'd tolerated her for Alicia's sake. Now I was wondering how long she'd been part of the conspiracy. The front door opened before I could knock. Susie stood there in yoga pants and a designer sweater, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail that probably took 20 minutes to make look casual. Greg. She tried to smile, but it came out looking like a grimace. I was just talking to my wife. Yeah, I figured. I pushed past her into the house. Nice place, very beige. Paul's not home. Maybe you should come back when Paul's never home. He's too busy drilling cavities to pay attention to what his wife does all day. I settled into their expensive leather couch without being invited. We need to talk, Susie. She remained standing, arms crossed defensively. If this is about Alicia, it's about you, about how long you've been covering for her, about how many lies you've told me to my face. I don't know what you mean. Sure you do. Remember last month when I asked where Alicia was? You said she was at your house, having a girls' night. Except she wasn't, was she? She was at the Moonlight Motel with her boyfriend. Susie's face went pale. Greg, I think you're confused. I'm not confused. I'm pissed off. There's a difference. I leaned forward. How many times, Susie? How many times did you lie for her? I was trying to protect... Protect who? Her or yourself? That stopped her cold. I could see the wheels turning behind her eyes, trying to figure out how much I knew. See, here's what I think happened, I continued. I think you knew about Dominic from the beginning. Maybe you even introduced them. You were probably living vicariously through her affair, getting your thrills from helping her sneak around. That's not... Or maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe you just enjoyed watching my marriage fall apart. Some people get off on other people's misery. Susie finally sat down, her composure cracking. You don't understand. Alicia was miserable. She felt trapped. Trapped? In a nice house? With a husband who worked his A off to give her everything she wanted? You gave her things, Greg. You never gave her passion. I laughed. Passion, right. And Dominic's passionate, is he? With his gym and his protein shakes and his IQ that barely hits double digits? He makes her feel alive. There's that word again. You two have been comparing notes. I stood up, walked to the mantel where Susie displayed her perfect family photos. Tell me something. Does Paul know about your little hobby? Does he know his wife gets her kicks from destroying other people's marriages? I didn't destroy anything. Your marriage was already broken. My marriage was fine until my wife started taking advice from someone who thinks happiness comes from sleeping with other people's husbands. Susie's eyes flashed. What's that supposed to mean? Come on, Susie, you think I don't know about you and that tennis instructor at the country club? What's his name? Brad? Brad with the tan and the trust fund? The color drained from her face completely. Yeah, I know about Brad. Funny thing about small towns, somebody's always watching. Somebody always talks. I picked up one of the family photos, studied it like I was seeing it for the first time. Paul seems like a nice guy. Works hard, provides for his family, trusts his wife. Be a shame if someone told him what she does while he's at the office. You wouldn't. Wouldn't I? You helped destroy my marriage. Why should yours be off limits? Susie was shaking now, her perfect composure completely gone. What do you want? I want the truth. All of it. When did Alicia start seeing Dominic? How did they meet? What was your role in all this? She was quiet for a long moment, weighing her options. Finally, she spoke. They met at my birthday party 3 months ago. I invited some people from the gym. Paul's been after me to get more exercise. She laughed bitterly. Alicia was complaining about you, about how boring her life was. Dominic was attentive, and you encouraged it. I didn't discourage it. Alicia's my friend. I wanted her to be happy. So you helped her lie, gave her alibis, covered for her when she was off screwing around. It wasn't like that. What was it like, Susie? Explain it to me. She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. She was going to leave you anyway. She'd been talking about it for months. I thought if she had someone else, someone who made her happy, maybe she'd have the courage to do it. So this was all for my benefit? You were doing me a favor? You're not right for each other, Greg. You never were. Alicia needs someone who can match her energy, her ambition. Her spending habits? She deserves better than a restaurant manager in a dead-end town. That stung, but I didn't let it show. And what do you deserve, Susie? Better than a dentist who works his A off to pay for your tennis lessons and your shopping sprees? That's different. How? How is it different? She didn't have an answer for that. I put the photo back on the mantle, made sure it was perfectly straight. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay away from Alicia. You're going to stay away from me. And you're going to think real hard about whether your friendship with her is worth losing your marriage. You can't tell Paul, please. I won't have to. You will. What? You heard me. You're going to tell your husband about Brad. Tonight, before I leave this house. I can't. It would destroy him. Then you should have thought of that before you started playing games with other people's lives. I headed for the door, then stopped. Oh, and Susie, if I find out you're still helping Alicia, if I find out you're still covering for her or giving her advice or even talking to her, I'll make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of friend you really are. I left her there, sobbing in her perfect beige living room, surrounded by photos of the life she was about to lose. As I drove away, I could see her through the window, phone in her hand, probably trying to work up the courage to call her husband. Phase 3 was complete, but I was just getting started. The next morning brought rain and a phone call from my lawyer, Janet Morrison. She was 65, tough as leather, and had been handling divorces in Millfield since before I was born. Good news and bad news, Greg. Which do you want first? I was sitting in my truck outside the restaurant, watching the rain streak down the windshield. Bad news. Always start with the bad news. Alicia hired herself a lawyer, Thomas Brennan from Cleveland. Big firm, bigger bills. He's already filed a motion to contest the divorce. On what grounds? Irreconcilable differences, abandonment, emotional distress, the usual BS. He's also asking for temporary spousal support and half the value of your house. I laughed. Half the house she never owned? Good luck with that. Here's the thing, Greg. Ohio law says she's entitled to compensation for improvements made to the property during the marriage. New kitchen, finished basement, that deck you built last summer. She can claim half the increased value. What's the good news? The good news is Brennan's an idiot. He's fishing. If she had a strong case, he'd be asking for everything. The fact that he's going after improvements tells me he's got nothing. How long is this going to take? 6 months, maybe longer if they want to drag it out. But Greg, there's something else. Brennan's been asking questions about your finances. Bank records, credit reports, business dealings. He's looking for hidden assets. I don't have any hidden assets. What you see is what you get. I know that, and you know that, but Alicia might not. Sometimes people get desperate and start making accusations. I thought about that. Alicia had always been fuzzy on our finances, happy to spend money without worrying about where it came from. She probably assumed I was hiding something, because that's what she would do. Let them look, I said. I've got nothing to hide. Good. Now, about this business with her boyfriend. What about it? And be careful, Greg. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but don't do anything stupid. Attack charges won't help your case. I thought about my conversation with Dominic the night before. Define stupid. Anything that involves the police, the hospital, or the evening news. Got it. Anything else? Yeah, document everything. Phone calls, text messages, any contact she tries to make. If this goes to court, we want to show a pattern of maltreatment. I hung up and stared at the restaurant through the rain. Millfield Family Dining, established 1987. The kind of place that served meatloaf and mashed potatoes, and never changed the menu because the customers didn't want it to change. I'd been managing it for 8 years, turning a profit when half the businesses on Main Street were closing down. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was the honest work. Apparently, that wasn't enough for Alicia. My phone buzzed. Text message from a number I didn't recognize. We need to talk. Meet me at the diner on Route 9 at noon. Come alone. D. Dominic. Still trying to have his man-to-man conversation. I texted back, bring your insurance card. The Sunrise Diner sat on Route 9 like a chrome and neon monument to better days. It was the kind of place truckers stopped for coffee and pie, where the waitresses called you hun, and the coffee was strong enough to wake the dead. Dominic was already there when I arrived, sitting in a back booth like he was afraid someone might see him. He looked different in daylight. Smaller somehow, less intimidating. The bruise on his ribs from our encounter at the gym was probably making itself known. I slid into the booth across from him and ordered coffee from a waitress who looked like she'd been working there since the Eisenhower administration. You came, he said. I was curious. What's so important? It couldn't wait. I want to make you a deal. I'm listening. Alicia and I are serious about each other. This isn't some fling. We want to be together. Congratulations. Send me a wedding invitation. I'm willing to pay you. For the house. For the inconvenience. For everything. I stared at him. You want to buy me off? I want to make this easy for everyone. Name a price. You think this is about money? Everything's about money, Martinez. You're angry because your wife left you for someone else. I get it. But holding on to that anger isn't going to bring her back. Take the money, start over somewhere else. The waitress brought my coffee. I took a sip, let the silence stretch out. Dominic was fidgeting. I was playing with his phone, looking everywhere but at me. How much? I asked finally. $50,000 cash. All you have to do is sign the papers and walk away. $50,000. I pretended to consider it. That's a lot of money for a gym owner. I've got investors. Silent partners. Silent partners, right. I leaned back in the booth. Tell me something, Dom. Where do you see this relationship going? You and Alicia, I mean. We're going to get married. Start a family. A family. Kids? Eventually. You know Alicia can't have kids, right? The color drained from his face. What? Endometriosis, had it for years. One of the reasons our marriage didn't work out. She wanted children, but her body had other plans. I was lying, but Dominic didn't know that. Didn't she tell you? We haven't talked about that yet. Probably waiting for the right time. Women do that sometimes, wait until after the wedding to drop the big news. I took another sip of coffee. Still want to start that family? You're lying. Am I? Ask her. Tonight, when you're lying in bed, talking about your future together, ask her about kids. See what she says. Dominic was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. I could see doubt creeping into his eyes again. The money's still on the table, he said finally. Keep your money, Dom. I don't want it. Then what do you want? I want you to understand something. Alicia isn't the woman you think she is. She's selfish, manipulative, and expensive. She'll bleed you dry and then move on to the next guy with a bigger bank account. You're just bitter. Maybe, but I'm also right. I stood up, dropped a 5 on the table. Good luck, Dom. You're going to need it. I was halfway to the door when he called out, Martinez. I turned back. This isn't over. No. I said, it's not. News travels fast in a town like Millfield, but gossip travels faster. By Thursday morning, everyone knew about the divorce, the affair, and the showdown at Torino's gym. The story had grown in the telling. I'd apparently beaten up 3 guys instead of one, and Alicia was supposedly pregnant with Dominic's child. Small towns love a scandal, especially when it involves people they know. I was restocking the salad bar when Richard Kowalski walked into the restaurant. Rich was my oldest friend in Millfield, a guy I'd known since I moved to town 10 years ago. He owned a plumbing business and coached Little League on weekends. Solid, dependable, the kind of friend you could count on. Or so I thought. "Greg," he nodded, looking uncomfortable. "Got a minute?" "Sure, coffee." "This isn't a social call." Something in his tone set off alarm bells. I followed him to a corner booth away from the other customers. "What's on your mind, Rich?" "It's about Alicia, about what happened." "What about it?" "Look, I know you're hurting. Divorce is tough, especially when there's cheating involved. But some of the things I'm hearing..." "What things?" "That you threatened her. That you threw her out of the house with nothing but the clothes on her back." I stared at him. "Who told you that?" "Does it matter? The point is, people are talking, and not all of it's sympathetic. Since when do you care what people think? Since my wife started getting phone calls from concerned friends. Since my daughter came home from school asking why Mr. Martinez is being mean to his wife." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "Your daughter?" "Kids hear things, Greg. They repeat what they hear at home. And right now, what they're hearing is that you're the bad guy in this story." The bad guy. I tasted the words like poison. "I'm the bad guy because my wife was cheating on me? You're the bad guy because you handled it wrong. You should have tried counseling. You should have fought for your marriage." "Fought for what? A woman who was screwing around behind my back? A woman who treated me like hired help?" "That's your side of the story. It's the only side that matters. I lived it." Rich leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Alicia called Nikki. She was crying, said you'd been emotionally abusive for months, said you controlled the money, isolated her from her friends." Nikki was Rich's wife, a social worker who saw misuse everywhere she looked. If Alicia had gotten to her, the damage was already done. "And you believed her?" "I believe something's not right here. The Greg Martinez I know doesn't kick his wife out of the house over a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" I couldn't keep the anger out of my voice. "Is that what we're calling infidelity now?" "Lower your voice. People are staring." I looked around the restaurant. He was right. Every conversation had stopped. Every eye was on our table. In a town like Millfield, a raised voice was as good as a public announcement. "You know what, Rich? You're right. I should have handled it differently. I should have been a good little husband and pretended I didn't know what was going on. I should have smiled and nodded while my wife made a fool of me. That's not what I'm saying." "Then what are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe you should consider the possibility that you're not entirely innocent here. Maybe there were problems in your marriage that you're not seeing." I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "Get out, Greg. Get out of my restaurant. And don't come back." Rich stared at me for a moment, then shook his head. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. You can't handle anyone questioning your version of events. My version of events is the truth. Your truth. There's a difference." He left without another word, and I was alone with a restaurant full of people who'd just witnessed me throw out one of my oldest friends. I could feel their judgment, like a physical weight, pressing down on my shoulders. The lunch crowd was smaller than usual. Word was getting around that Greg Martinez was unstable, dangerous, not the kind of person you wanted to support with your business. By closing time, I'd served maybe half the customers I normally would on a Thursday. I was locking up when Karen appeared beside my truck. "Rough day?" she asked. "You could say that." "Heard about your conversation with Rich Kowalski. Half the town's talking about it. Let them talk." "That's not like you, Greg. You're usually more careful about your public image." "Maybe I'm tired of being careful. Maybe I'm tired of pretending everything's fine when it's not." Karen studied my face in the streetlight. "What happened to you wasn't fair, but turning into the town pariah isn't going to fix it. What would you suggest? Smile and wave while my wife rewrites history." "I'd suggest you get ahead of the story. Right now, Alicia's controlling the narrative. She's playing the sufferer and people are buying it. So what do I do? You tell your side, but you do it smart. You don't lose your temper, you don't make threats, and you don't give them any ammunition to use against you." She was right, but I was past caring about public opinion. The people of Millfield had already chosen sides, and I wasn't on the winning team. "Thanks for the advice," I said. "Greg, whatever you're planning, be careful. This town loves a scandal, but they love a downfall even more." I drove home through empty streets past houses where people I'd known for years were probably discussing my personal business over dinner. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I'd made a decision. If they wanted a villain, I'd give them one. Friday night at the Black Cat Lounge was usually standing room only, but tonight felt different. Conversations stopped when I walked in, then resumed in whispers. I could feel eyes on me as I made my way to the bar, measuring, judging, waiting to see what the crazy man would do next. Karen poured my usual without being asked. You sure you want to be here tonight? Where else would I be? Home, laying low, letting this blow over. I'm not hiding from anyone. I'm not talking about hiding. I'm talking about strategy. Before I could answer, the door opened and Dominic walked in. He'd cleaned himself up since our diner meeting. New shirt, fresh haircut. The kind of confidence that comes from thinking you're winning. Behind him came Alicia, looking like $1 million in a black dress that probably cost more than most people's rent. The entire bar went quiet. They found a table in the corner, making a show of being together, of being happy. Alicia kept glancing in my direction, probably hoping for a reaction. Dominic kept his back to me, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. This is going to end badly, Karen muttered. Probably. You could leave right now. Walk out and let them have their moment. I could, but I won't. 20 minutes later, they were joined by Susie Patterson. She looked nervous, her eyes darting around the room like she was expecting trouble, which, to be fair, she probably was. I finished my drink and walked over to their table. Evening, folks. Mind if I join you? Alicia's face went pale. Greg, please don't make a scene. A scene? I'm just being neighborly. I pulled out the empty chair and sat down without being invited. Beautiful night, isn't it? Dominic started to stand, but I held up a hand. Easy, big guy. I come in peace. I smiled at the three of them. So, how's everyone doing? Adjusting well to the new living arrangements? We're fine, Alicia said stiffly. Good, good. And Susie, how's Paul? Still working those long hours? Susie's face went white. He's fine. Glad to hear it. Marriage is such a precious thing, don't you think? Trust, communication, honesty, all so important. What do you want, Martinez? Dominic growled. Want? I don't want anything. I'm just catching up with old friends. I leaned back in my chair. Actually, that's not entirely true. I did want to thank you, Dom. Thank me for taking Alicia off my hands. I've been doing some math, and you know what I discovered? I'm going to save about $3,000 a month now that she's gone. Credit cards, shopping, spa treatments. It all adds up. Alicia's cheeks flushed red. You're being ridiculous. Am I? Let's see. There's the monthly payment on that BMW. You insisted on leasing. The membership to the country club you never use? Those weekly shopping trips to Cleveland. I pulled out my phone, pretended to check something. Oh, and the credit card bills. Jesus, Alicia, did you buy stock in Nordstrom? That's private information, she hissed. Was private. Now it's evidence in a divorce proceeding. I looked at Dominic. Hope you've got deep pockets, Dom. This one's expensive. I can take care of her, he said, but there was uncertainty in his voice. I'm sure you can. What's a gym pulling in these days? 100,000 a year, 150? Should be plenty for someone with simple tastes. I could see doubt creeping into his eyes. Alicia had probably been painting herself as low maintenance, the kind of woman who'd be happy with dinner and a movie. You know what the funny thing is? I continued. I actually thought I was the problem. All those fights about money, about spending, about priorities, I thought I was being unreasonable. Turns out I was just being realistic. Stop it, Alicia said. Just stop. Stop what? Telling the truth? I thought you lawyers loved the truth. You're drunk. I'm sober as a judge. Which reminds me, did you tell Dom about the gambling? The color drained from her face completely. What gambling? Dominic asked. Oh, she didn't mention that? Alicia's got a little problem with online poker. Lost about $8,000 last year before I found out and canceled the credit cards. That's a lie, she whispered. Is it? I've got the statements at home. Bank records, credit card bills, the whole paper trail. I turned to Dominic. You might want to keep an eye on that. Gambling obsession's a serious thing. Dominic was staring at Alicia like he'd never seen her before. Is that true? It was just a few games. It wasn't a problem. $8,000 sounds like a problem to me, I said helpfully. That's when Susie spoke up. You're doing this on purpose. You're trying to sabotage their relationship. Sabotage? I'm just sharing information. Dom's a big boy. He can make his own decisions. I stood up, straightened my jacket. But you're right, Susie. I should let you folks get back to your evening. Don't let me interrupt the celebration. I was halfway back to the bar when Dominic caught up with me. We're not done talking, he said, grabbing my arm. The entire bar turned to watch. This was what they'd been waiting for. The confrontation, the explosion, the moment when civilized behavior broke down and the real show began. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back up at his face. You want to do this here, in front of everyone? I want you to stop playing games. I'm not playing games, Dom. I'm playing chess. And you're about 3 moves away from checkmate. He tightened his grip. What's that supposed to mean? It means you're in over your head. You think you won the prize, but all you won was the bill. Let go of him, Dominic. We both turned. Alicia was standing behind us, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. Let go of him, she repeated. You're making a scene. He started it, and I'm finishing it. She grabbed Dominic's other arm, tried to pull him away. Come on, we're leaving. But Dominic wasn't ready to back down, not in front of the whole town, not with his reputation on the line. No, he said. I'm tired of this guy thinking he can push people around. Push people around? I laughed. Dom, I haven't laid a finger on you. Hell, I haven't even raised my voice. You think you're so smart. You think you're better than everyone else. I think I'm smarter than you. But that's not exactly a high bar. That's when he swung at me. Just like at the gym, I saw it coming from a mile away. But this time, instead of ducking, I stepped back and let his fist connect with the brick pillar behind me. The sound of breaking bones was audible across the entire bar. Dominic screamed, clutching his hand to his chest. Blood was already seeping between his fingers. Jesus Christ, Dom! Alicia rushed to his side. What did you do? He moved, Dominic gasped. The fool moved. I looked around the bar at all the witnesses, all the people who'd just seen Dominic throw the first punch, seen me do nothing but step out of the way. Somebody should call an ambulance, I said calmly. Looks like he might have broken something. Karen was already on the phone. The crowd pressed closer, everyone wanting to see the damage, to witness the moment when the big tough guy learned that actions have consequences. This isn't over, Dominic said through gritted teeth. Yeah, I said, pulling on my jacket. It is. I left them there, Dominic bleeding, Alicia panicking, Susie trying to disappear into the crowd. As I walked to my truck, I could hear the whispers starting, the story already being shaped and reshaped by 50 different voices. By morning, everyone in Millfield would know that Dominic Torino had attacked an unarmed man and ended up breaking his hand on a brick wall. They'd know that Greg Martinez hadn't thrown a single punch, hadn't even tried to defend himself. They'd know who the real aggressor was. Phase 4 was complete. The emergency room at Millfield General was the kind of place where you went to wait and think about your life choices. I'd been there for 2 hours, not because I was hurt, but because the police had asked me to stick around for a statement. Officer Patricia Hendricks was a 20-year veteran who'd seen every kind of domestic dispute the town had to offer. She sat across from me in the waiting room, notepad in hand, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. So let me get this straight, she said. You were having a conversation with Mr. Torino when he suddenly attacked you? That's right. And you didn't provoke him in any way? I was talking to my ex-wife and her boyfriend. If that's provocation, then every divorced man in America is guilty. What exactly were you talking about? Financial matters, divorce proceedings, the usual stuff. Hendricks made a note. Mr. Torino claims you were maltreating them, making threats. I never made a single threat. Ask anyone who was there. I did. Got about 15 different versions of the same story. You were calm, he was agitated, and he threw the first punch. The only punch. Yeah, that too. She closed her notepad. Look, Martinez, I've known you for 8 years. You're not the type to start trouble, but you're also not the type to walk into a bar where your ex-wife is having drinks with her new boyfriend. It's a free country. It is. But it's also a small town, and small towns have long memories. Whatever you're planning, whatever this is leading up to, maybe you should think about whether it's worth it. Worth what? Worth becoming the kind of person you never wanted to be. She left me with that thought. 20 minutes later, a doctor came out to tell me that Dominic had broken 2 bones in his hand and would need surgery. He'd be wearing a cast for 6 weeks, and there was a chance of permanent nerve damage. I felt exactly as bad about that as you'd expect. I was walking to my truck when Alicia appeared out of nowhere, like a perfectly dressed ghost. "We need to talk," she said. "No, we don't. Please, Greg, just 5 minutes." She looked tired, older somehow. The stress was starting to show around her eyes and the way she held her shoulders. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "5 minutes," I said. We walked to the edge of the parking lot, away from the hospital entrance. The October air was cold, and Alicia wrapped her arms around herself. "This has to stop," she said. "What has to stop?" "You know what? The games, the manipulation, the way you're trying to turn everyone against us. I'm not trying to do anything. I'm just living my life. You're destroying his life. Dominic's a good man. Dominic's an idiot who punches brick walls. That's not my fault. You baited him. You knew exactly what you were doing." I studied her face in the parking lot lights. "You really believe that, don't you? You really think I'm the villain here, aren't you? Alicia, you cheated on me for 3 months. You lied to my face. You humiliated me in front of the whole town, and you tried to take half of everything I own. But I'm the villain because I won't quietly disappear and let you rewrite history. I never meant for it to happen. It just did. Bees, affairs don't just happen. They're planned, executed, and covered up. You made a choice every single time you met him. Every single time you lied to me about where you were going." She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "I was lonely, Greg. I felt invisible, like I didn't matter to you anymore. So you decided to matter to someone else. I made a mistake. I know that now. But we could still fix this. We could go to counseling, work things out." "Work what out?" "You're living with another man. You're in love with another man. What exactly are we supposed to work out?" "I'm not in love with him." That stopped me cold. "What?" "I thought I was, but I'm not, and it was just excitement, the thrill of something new. It wasn't real." "Then why are you here? Why are you defending him?" "Because I don't know what else to do. I've made such a mess of everything and I don't know how to fix it." For a moment, just a moment, I felt something that might have been sympathy. This was the woman I'd married, the one who sometimes showed vulnerability beneath all the armor and attitude. Then I remembered the lies, the betrayal, the way she'd made me feel like I was crazy for suspecting what was right in front of my face. "You can't fix it, Alicia. Some things, once they're broken, stay broken." "So that's it? 7 years of marriage, and you're just going to throw it all away?" "I'm not throwing anything away. You already did that." She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "I guess I deserve that." "Yeah, you did. What happens now?" "Now you figure out your life without me in it. You figure out whether Dominic is worth all the bridges you burned to be with him. And if he's not, then you live with the consequences of your choices, just like the rest of us." I left her standing there in the cold, alone, with her regrets and her designer dress and her perfect hair that was finally starting to look imperfect. I was almost to my truck when she called out, "Greg." I turned back. "I'm sorry for all of it. I know that doesn't change anything, but I needed you to know." "I know," no, I said, "but sorry doesn't fix broken." I drove home through empty streets, past the restaurant where I'd spent 8 years building something solid, past the houses where people I'd thought were friends had already chosen sides in a war I never wanted to fight. My house felt different now, emptier, but also cleaner somehow, like a fever had broken. I poured myself a drink and sat in my living room thinking about choices and consequences, about the difference between justice and revenge. Tomorrow, I'd start phase 5. Saturday morning brought unexpected visitors. I was having coffee on my back porch when Paul Patterson appeared at my fence gate, looking like he'd aged 10 years overnight. "Greg, can we talk?" Paul was a good man, quiet, hardworking, the kind of dentist who remembered his patients' kids' names and never overcharged for procedures. He deserved better than what he'd gotten. "Come on up," I said. He climbed the porch steps slowly, like each one hurt. His eyes were red-rimmed, his hair uncombed. He looked like a man who'd spent the night staring at the ceiling. "Susie told me," he said without preamble, "about the tennis instructor, about everything." "I'm sorry, Paul. Are you, or are you just sorry you had to be the one to tell her to come clean?" I considered lying, decided he'd had enough lies. "Both." He sat down in the chair across from me, stared out at my backyard. 22 years. We've been married 22 years. I thought I knew her. People change. Or maybe they just show you who they really were all along. Is that what happened with Alicia? Did she change, or did you just finally see her clearly? I don't know. Does it matter? I guess not. He was quiet for a moment. "Susie wants to work things out. Says it was just a fling, that it didn't mean anything." "What do you want?" I want to go back to last week when I thought my wife was faithful and my marriage was solid, but that's not an option, is it? No, it's not. Paul stood up, straightened his shoulders. I wanted to thank you for forcing the truth out into the open. I know that wasn't your intention, but I needed to know. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, but whatever I do, it'll be based on reality instead of lies. He left the same way he'd come, quietly and without drama. I watched him walk back to his house, where Susie was probably waiting for an answer he wasn't ready to give. An hour later, my phone rang. Janet Morrison, my lawyer. We need to meet, she said. Something's happened. Her office was downtown, in one of those old buildings that had been converted from residential to commercial sometime in the 1980s. Janet sat behind a desk covered with legal documents, looking grim. Alicia's lawyer called this morning, she said. They want to settle. Settle what? She doesn't have a case. Apparently, she's had a change of heart. She's willing to accept a no-fault divorce with no spousal support and no claim on the house. I stared at her. What's the catch? No catch. She wants out, clean and simple. We could have this wrapped up in 30 days. Why? What changed? I don't know, and I don't care. Sometimes people come to their senses. The question is, do you want to accept? It was everything I'd wanted when this started. A clean break, no ongoing financial obligations, no protracted legal battle. So why did it feel like a trap? There's something else, Janet continued. Brennan mentioned that his client might be leaving town, something about a job opportunity in California. California. 3,000 miles away from Millfield, from Dominic, from the mess she'd made of her life here. I'll think about it, I said. Don't think too long. Offers like this have a way of disappearing. I drove to the restaurant, but I couldn't concentrate on work. My mind kept circling back to Alicia's words in the hospital parking lot, the way she'd looked when she said she wasn't in love with Dominic. Around 3 o'clock, Karen showed up. Heard about the settlement offer, she said. News travels fast. Janet Morrison's secretary is my cousin. So what are you going to do? Take it, I guess. It's what I wanted. Is it? I looked at her. What do you mean? I mean, you've been planning something for weeks. You've got that look in your eyes, like you're building up to something big. And now, right when you're about to spring whatever trap you've been setting, Alicia wants to surrender. Maybe she's smarter than I gave her credit for. Maybe, or maybe she's more desperate. That evening, I drove past Dominic's gym. It was closed, a handwritten sign on the door explaining that the owner was recovering from an injury. Through the windows, I could see workout equipment sitting idle, the mirrors reflecting empty space. I drove past the house where Alicia was staying, a rental property on the east side of town. Her BMW was in the driveway, but the lights were off. It looked like the kind of place where people went to hide. Finally, I drove to the Black Cat Lounge. Saturday night, the place should have been packed. Instead, it was maybe half full, the mood subdued. The fight between Dominic and me had cast a shadow over the whole town, made people choose sides they didn't want to choose. You're becoming a regular, Karen said, pouring my usual. Not much else to do. You could accept the settlement. Move on with your life. I could, but you won't. I don't know yet. She leaned across the bar, lowered her voice. Greg, whatever you're planning, remember that revenge is a luxury you might not be able to afford. Meaning this town is watching you. Every move you make, every word you say. Right now, you've got the moral high ground. Don't throw it away for the sake of getting even. I finished my drink and headed for the door. As I was leaving, I saw Susie Patterson sitting alone at a corner table, staring into a wine glass like it held the answers to all her problems. She looked up as I passed. Our eyes met for a moment, and I saw something there I hadn't expected. Gratitude. Despite everything, despite the way her world had fallen apart, she was grateful that the lies were finally over. I drove home through quiet streets, past houses where families were settling in for the night, where people were living normal lives with normal problems. For a moment, I envied them their simplicity. My house was dark and empty, but it didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt like possibility. I sat in my living room thinking about choices and consequences, about the difference between winning and being right. Tomorrow, I would make my decision. Sunday morning, I called Janet Morrison and told her to accept the settlement. She was surprised but pleased. Clean divorces were easier for everyone involved. Smart choice, she said. You'll be a free man by Thanksgiving. But freedom felt different than I'd expected. Emptier, maybe, or maybe just unfamiliar. I spent the morning at the restaurant, doing inventory and catching up on paperwork. Normal things, routine things, the kind of tasks that reminded me I had a life beyond the drama of the past few weeks. Around noon, Richard Kowalski walked in. "We need to talk," he said. "I thought we were done talking." "So did I, but my wife's been giving me hell for the past 3 days telling me I was wrong about you." Nikki said that. Turns out Alicia's story had some holes in it, big ones. Nikki started asking questions, doing some digging. She found out about the affair, about the lies, about how you've been getting screwed over from day one. Rich sat down at the counter, looking uncomfortable. "I owe you an apology. Forget it." "No, I can't forget it. You're my friend, and I turned my back on you when you needed support. That's not the kind of man I want to be." "People make mistakes." "Yeah, they do. But friends are supposed to give each other the benefit of the doubt." "I didn't do that." I poured him a cup of coffee, considered my words carefully. "You know what the funny thing is? Part of me was relieved when you walked away." "Relieved?" "It meant I didn't have to pretend anymore. I didn't have to be the good guy, the reasonable one, the man who handles everything with dignity and grace. I could just be angry." "And how did that work out for you?" "Better than I expected. Turns out I'm pretty good at being angry." Rich smiled for the first time since he'd walked in. "Yeah, I heard about Dominic's hand. Half the town's calling you a genius, the other half's calling you a psychopath." "What do you call me?" "My friend, if you'll have me back." We shook hands across the counter, and something that had been broken started to heal. That afternoon, I got an unexpected phone call. Dominic Torino calling from his cell phone. "We need to talk," he said. "I thought we were done talking. Meet me at the gym, 1 hour. Your gym's closed. I'll open it for you." I almost said no, almost hung up and went about my day. But curiosity got the better of me. Torino's fitness looked different with the lights off and the music silent. Smaller somehow, less impressive. Dominic was sitting on a bench press, his right hand in a cast, looking like a deflated version of himself. "Thanks for coming," he said. "What do you want, Dom?" "I want to understand something. Why did you do it?" "Do what?" "All of it. The mind games, the manipulation, the way you turned this whole town against us." "What was the point?" I looked around the empty gym at all the mirrors and chrome and motivational posters. "You really don't know? I know you were angry. I know your wife left you for me. But the rest of it was about respect, Dom. You didn't just sleep with my wife. You flaunted it. You made me look like a fool in front of everyone I know. So you decided to get even. I decided to show people who you really are. A guy who hits first and thinks later. A guy who goes after married women because single ones see through you." Dominic was quiet for a moment, staring at his broken hand. "She's leaving." "What?" "Alicia. She's moving to California, some job opportunity. She asked me to come with her." "Are you going?" "I don't know. This place, this business. It's everything I worked for. But without her what? You'll have to find someone else to pay your bills." His head snapped up. "What's that supposed to mean? Come on, Dom. You think I don't know about your financial situation? The gym's been losing money for months. You're behind on rent, behind on equipment payments. Alicia was your meal ticket." "That's not true." "Isn't it? Funny how you fell in love with her right around the time your business started failing." I could see the doubt in his eyes, the same doubt I'd been planting for weeks. "You want to know the real joke?" I continued. "She doesn't love you either. Never did. You were just her way of feeling young again, of proving she could still turn heads. You're lying. Ask her. Tonight, when she tells you about California, ask her if she loves you. Look in her eyes when she answers." I headed for the door, then stopped. "Oh, and Dom, good luck with the hand. Hope it heals properly." I left him there in his empty gym, surrounded by all that useless equipment, probably wondering if anything he'd believed about his life was actually true. That evening, I had dinner at home. A simple meal, nothing fancy, the kind of thing I'd been cooking for myself before Alicia decided I should cook for her too. It tasted better than I remembered. My phone rang once, Alicia's number. I let it go to voicemail. Later, I drove through town one last time, past all the places where this story had played out. The Black Cat Lounge was busy again, people moving on with their lives, the scandal already becoming just another story to tell. I stopped at the cemetery where my parents were buried, stood by their graves in the October darkness. They'd been married 43 years, through good times and bad, through sickness and health, all the way to the end. I did my best, I told them. Maybe not my smartest, but my best. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the smell of autumn, of things ending and other things beginning. I drove home to my empty house, poured myself a drink, and sat in my living room thinking about the future. Tomorrow, I'd start over. New routines, new possibilities, new chances to be the man I wanted to be. Outside, Millfield settled into another quiet Sunday night. Inside, Greg Martinez finally felt like himself again. 3 weeks later, Alicia left for California. I didn't see her go, but Karen told me she'd stopped by the bar the night before, looking for me. She seemed different, Karen said, like smaller, like someone had let all the air out of her. Did she say what she wanted? To apologize, to explain, to ask if there was any chance. And you told her? I told her you were busy, which you were, living your life. Dominic stayed in Millfield, but his gym never reopened. Word was, he'd sold the equipment to pay his debts and taken a job at the factory outside town. I saw him once at the grocery store, his hand still in a cast, looking like a man who'd aged 10 years in a month. He pretended not to see me. I returned the favor. Paul Patterson filed for divorce 2 weeks after Alicia left town. Susie moved back in with her parents, a 50-year-old woman starting over from scratch. Sometimes I felt bad about that. Most times I didn't. The town moved on, the way small towns do. New scandals replaced old ones. New gossip pushed the story of Greg Martinez and his cheating wife into the past tense. I became just another divorced guy in a town full of divorced guys, notable only for how spectacularly I'd handled my wife's betrayal. Some called it justice. Others called it revenge. I called it Tuesday. My restaurant prospered. Funny how much easier it was to focus on work when you weren't wondering what your wife was doing, who she was with, whether the person you'd trusted most in the world was lying to your face. I hired 2 new waitresses and expanded the menu, started staying open later on weekends. People like routine, comfort, the kind of honest food that doesn't pretend to be something it's not. Rich and I resumed our friendship, stronger than before. His wife Nikki made a point of eating at the restaurant twice a week, her way of showing support. Their daughter stopped asking why Mr. Martinez was being mean to his wife. Janet Morrison called in December to tell me the divorce was final. Congratulations, she said. You're officially a free man. Free. It was a word I was still getting used to. Christmas came and went quietly. I spent it with Rich and Nikki and their family, eating too much and watching football, and pretending that being alone during the holidays didn't sting a little. But it was a good sting, the kind that reminded you that you were alive, that you'd survived something that could have destroyed you. New Year's Eve, I worked late at the restaurant, serving couples who were celebrating another year together, families who were looking forward to whatever came next. When I locked up at midnight, I could hear fireworks in the distance, the sound of a town welcoming the future. I drove home through empty streets, past houses where people were making resolutions they probably wouldn't keep, promising themselves they'd be better, kinder, more honest in the year to come. My house was dark and quiet, but it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like home. I poured myself a drink, good whiskey, the kind I'd never bought when I was married because Alicia thought it was a waste of money, and sat in my living room thinking about the past year. I'd lost a wife, but I'd found myself. I'd lost friends, but I discovered who my real friends were. I'd lost the illusion of a perfect marriage, but I'd gained the reality of an honest life. Not a bad trade. Outside, Millfield settled into another winter night. Inside, Greg Martinez raised his glass to the empty room and toasted the man he'd become. Here's to new beginnings, I said to no one in particular. The whiskey tasted like freedom. 6 months later, I got a postcard from Los Angeles. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting. On the front was a picture of the Hollywood sign. On the back, just 4 words. I'm sorry, be well. I read it once, then threw it away. Some chapters, once they're closed, should stay that way. I was 44 years old, divorced, and running a small restaurant in a small town in Ohio. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was the life I'd earned. And for the first time in years, that felt like enough.